All right, what's up, everyone? Thank you for tuning in and welcome back to the Crypto Remora. My name is Wes, and I am joined with, as always, Sierra Crypto. And today, we're joined with an OG in this space, creative marketing pioneer and entrepreneur who's made an indelible mark on the industry. He's helped many influential companies acquire customers, launch products, generate brand love on a global scale, and that is the former Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer at Hashflow. And that's none other than Andrew Saunders. Andrew, what's up, man? Thank you for coming on the show today, dude.
What's up, my friends? How are you?
Doing good, man. Doing good, dude. We've been, getting to know you a little bit over the last year or so. I've been looking forward to this interview for a while now. So super excited to have you on.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, for sure, man. It's important to me, man. I think that, you know, to kind of help people understand and break down your experience and your background of the different industries you've been in over, during your marketing career. That's important for people to understand. So I do want to go over like a brief introduction of your
Sure.
experience and just kind of talk about that, and lead up to
Yeah.
where we are now, and then we'll get into the hash flow and the Hashverse. So
Yeah, for sure. So, Andrew Saunders, I'm now the CMO and CSO, Chief Strategy Officer of Hashflow, and we recently launched Hashverse, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit. I've been a marketer for about 20 years. Started my career actually in Hollywood, where I worked at Creative Artists Agency, which is a big talent agency. But my role was more building 360 brands and businesses around celebrity talent, like the 1% of Hollywood. There kind of started to become a bridge to both Madison Avenue, so think big big brands, also Silicon Valley, so think like early tech days, social media platforms, things like that. Was there for a very long time. Then left and went to NBC Universal, which is a very large scale global media company. Helped build and scale their in-house agency, which, fun fact, became more profitable than two of the networks combined at the time. And then after that, actually, funny enough, when I was at CAA, had been building Google-backed media companies. And so when my contract at NBC Universal was up, I decided to actually leave and go work for one of those companies called Tastemade, where I actually was the global head of brand strategy and marketing. We scaled that up to about 300 million monthly active users.
yeah,
And then, my background being very non-traditional, started building really kind of innovative non-traditional ad products and platforms, and working with a lot of big brands globally, including Amazon. And then Amazon actually ended up investing in us. And then I want to say about 2 weeks later, made a phone call and said, hey, we don't typically do this, but how would you feel if we pulled you out of the investment and brought you into headquarters?
yeah,
So went to Amazon for about 3 years, was the global head of entertainment and culture, which I guess the easiest way to think about it is think kind of future forward marketing and advertising. So a lot of what I was tasked with was, evaluating new platforms, measuring them, figuring out how to crack the code on things. So I was doing, all of our integrated marketing in TV, film, music videos, which we were then able to measure, helped crack the code on podcast advertising. And I think what was interesting about my role there is I was across many different products, services, companies, and also countries, which is pretty rare. Like at Amazon, you're usually, singular product, singular country focus. So had a pretty large, purview into the company globally. Was there for about 3 years, and then, got the crypto bug, which, I'm sure we'll talk about.
right,
Knew it was early just because, again, I've worked in, social in the early days, VR, AR, machine learning, AI, all these things. And so, I'm also a VC investor, but said to myself, like, I think it's early. Where do I go if it's early? Probably infrastructure. So was the first CMO of Arbitrum, the layer two. And then, was there for a bit. And then I think, like most marketers, definitely enjoy the B2C side a little more than the B2B side.
yeah.
And so now I'm the first CMO of Hashflow, which is a multi-chain DEX. And then we obviously just recently launched Hashverse, which is almost like a GameFi platform and trading, competition experience that really, I think, gamifies what it is to trade and typically how a DEX is used. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's just a little Andrew history for you.
Appreciate you sharing that, man.
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
yep.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, Andrew, you're humble. Just to name a few companies, Andrew's being very humble. You guys, some of the companies he's named quite a few, but I mean we're talking about Amazon, Apple, Disney, Coca-Cola, Comcast, Facebook, Ford, Starbucks, Subway, Target. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah,
It's
very
incredible.
extensive.
His resume is absolutely monstrous. But let's get into Hashflow a bit here, because we were lucky enough to get on the ground floor with Hashflow and kind of get to experience the gamified trading, which is such a good idea. I actually have a friend I just onboarded to crypto, and he like genuinely said to me on the phone, because I was walking him through, he's getting his XP points, and he's on the winning team. He is on the Lost Donkeys. Hee-haw, by the way.
Hee-haw.
There you go. Hee-haw.
we got a little more work to put in now. I'm not gonna lie. We got a couple 100,000 points we need to climb, but we're fighting. But his comment to me was, he said, "Wow, Nick, this is awesome, because it's not only teaching me how to trade, it's keeping me reminded daily and doing these daily tasks." Because it's like something for Web3. If you're new to Web3, you know, just using a wallet, figuring out what a ledger is, you know, sending Bitcoin to a Bitcoin wallet versus Ethereum to an Ethereum wallet. These are things that are slightly more advanced for most people coming into Web3.
For sure.
But for
100%.
Hashverse, you guys are gamifying it. You're making it simple. You're making it fun. You're making it competitive. And I just got to say, hats off to you guys, because my friend was in crypto for 2 years, and I'm like, man, how do you not know this stuff yet? But when he got on Hashverse, it's like everything started clicking for him again. It just started sinking in.
Yeah.
So I just want to say that you guys are doing it right. The way you're approaching it is awesome, and it's actually fun to see people I know personally, you know, learning and getting more comfortable and confident with the crypto. So I just want to say is that it kind of bridges into my first question here.
Sure.
You know, you've done Web 2 marketing. I would pretty much say you've conquered Web 2 marketing with all your stuff you've done. But now, when you're in Web 3, it's a whole different landscape, right? Because you've got
100%.
this learning curve that people don't know how to do this stuff. So as a marketer, as a pro marketer, what is it's a two-part question. What's the biggest difference you see between Web 2 and Web 3? And also, how are you making it, what is your strength? How are you approaching the Web 3 side of the marketing for Hashflow? How are you going to do that? Like, it's a mammoth task ahead of you. So how are you going to do that? What's your plan?
Yeah, so great question. I think, let me start with kind of the Web 2 versus Web 3, and then we could talk about like strategy. So the TLDR is, you know, you've clearly been on my website. So I've worked with pretty much every major consumer brand you can think of, not just in the US, but globally. And I think, you know, if you look at the list of brands, I mean, what you see media companies, you see tech companies, you see consumer retail companies, food companies, I mean, you name it, right? And I think the easiest way to kind of explain it is, you know, for the past 20 years, not only have I been early on almost every platform, and most of it's self-taught. I mean, that's kind of what you have to do when something's new, is you have to kind of, you know, do your research, you know, do your A/B testing and kind of crack the code yourself. But I have, you know, kind of in my brain, a million different models is maybe the way to think about it, right? So I'll give you a couple examples. So like I've worked with, you know, Chick-fil-A, very good friends for years. There's a lot of different models that like a quick serve restaurant uses that an auto brand would never use, right? Or there's a lot of different models that a direct to consumer startup business would use that a big traditional company wouldn't use. And so I have kind of in my head, let's just call it all these different blueprints and models that I've either seen or I've done myself, or, you know, I've seen others do. And so a lot of what I'm doing most of the time is actually looking at those models and figuring out how to either, you know, tweak them, or how to take one model and another model, pull them apart, put them together. But I think like the easiest way to kind of point to it, I'll give you a couple examples, is like, I think in I know in Web3, it's really more about what I call like inbound versus forced exposure marketing, right? Inbound is basically this notion of create great content, put it out there, target it the right way, let people discover it, and then let it pull them in, right? Inbound. Outbound forced exposure is typically what you'd see in like big traditional brands. And what I mean by that is, you know, whether it's Amazon or Nike or Adidas, it's like you're seeing a television ad, you're seeing a billboard, you're seeing a print ad, you're hearing a radio ad on iHeart, and like you're forced exposed to it, right? You're forced to see it or listen to it. And they're two very different models, right? And so I think when I first got into Web3, I mean, the first thing I did was like sit back and try to research and learn, because I think that's kind of the first thing anyone should do. But what I said to myself is I was like, interesting, like this is not a forced exposure industry, at least for natives. I won't talk about normies. I see elements of what I call D2C marketing, direct to consumer. So think like the Caspers of the world or Warby Parkers, which is really more about like community building. And then I'm also a VC. I've invested in a number of direct to consumer businesses, funny enough, mostly female founded because they're underserved. And they've actually all done quite well, which is great. Right. But I think like I look at a lot of the kind of community development models of D2Cs, and I'm like, I think that's more applicable to Web3 than a lot of, what I call forced exposure models. The second thing is there's definitely a big difference between like content marketing and traditional advertising. And I've been a content marketer for probably about 20 years. Which includes not just content marketing, social marketing, digital marketing, but also things like branded entertainment, branded content. So those are things that I've done, for years, successfully won awards behind. And so, said to myself, okay, so I've got community development from D2C, I've got, content marketing, I've got inbound marketing, all these things. So a lot of what I'm doing in my head is saying, what are the models from the past 20 years in various industries, countries, sectors, et cetera, that I've seen work for various reasons? And then how do I bring those into Web3 and also tweak them into a way that's more, I guess, contextually relevant to Web3 is maybe the best way to put it. Yeah. So that's probably the best way to put it in general. And so, the other thing I would add is for anyone that knows me in Web2, I'm definitely known for being a very like non-traditional disruptive guy. So, I do still get a lot of big brands that reach out, but it's like you don't hire me as a CMO to just do traditional marketing. You usually hire me because you want to do things differently, right? Yeah. Or there's certain things that you're focused on that like most traditional marketers just don't know how to do, right? Which I can always kind of get into that stuff if you're interested. And so, candidly, like I entered this industry, I feel like I kind of cracked the code fairly quickly, and then started to apply all those different models. So even like another one I'd add is co-marketing, I think co-marketing candidly kind of started in the hip hop industry with a lot of artists doing collabs on each other's records and trying to bring each other's audiences. Baby. Exactly. And funny enough, I'm friends with a lot of hip hop artists, so I'm like, I know that model well. And so, even with Hashverse, for example, like you'll see, obviously all these communities coming in there, but I also did a lot of co-marketing at Amazon, for Alexa. So when you see Alexa in, car ads and things like that. And I think, what a lot of people get wrong is when you're, let's call it like the big fish, right? And that could be at Arbitrum, I'm the blockchain and someone else is the project. At Hashflow, it could be I'm the trading platform or competition platform and others are the communities. I always try to take this model of like, how do I bring 2x the value to them that I generate for myself? Because I think at the end of the day, that's what creates a good partnership experience for your partner. Right. But again, that's a model that I've been using for, 10 years, just in completely different industries, Hollywood and big tech. And now I'm just bringing it to Web3. Yeah.
So speaking of the music industry, I heard a story about you not too long ago about pretty fascinating, man. You in your younger days, teenagers, towards the end of high school, man, I used to sneak out and go to these underground rap concerts. And I'm just curious. First of all,
how you know that,
bro. First of all, you must have had like really cool parents. First of all, second of all,
my parents are pretty awesome,
dude. They have to be. I mean, dude, you know what I mean. So, what was your
my
intention?
dad had a fro.
What was your intention for these concerts that you guys did? Was it just simply because you enjoyed the music, or were you like trying to kind of position yourself to get into marketing? Like, what was that about?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and I think it's like very relevant to Web3, right? Yeah, so like, my background, like I didn't grow up with a lot of money. Yeah. But to your point, I did grow up with very kind of supportive parents that were very focused on like letting me explore my personal passions, encouraging the importance of education, regardless of where that education comes from. Right. Which is, I think, part of why like Web3 just speaks to me so much on a personal level. And so, the way it started was I was always, probably thanks to my father, very passionate about music.
Yeah,
and I
same.
thought I wanted to be a music industry executive, which there's a funny kind of backstory to all that as well. And I was like, listen, I don't have the money to go to all these concerts, right? And so, first I started going to some shows, and then I started networking with people there because they started seeing me. And then literally this guy came up to me, and this is like a long time ago, but he goes, I don't know who you are, and I don't know whose parents lets them go to all these shows, but like, I see you everywhere. And I was like, hi, I'm Andrew. I like live in the suburbs and blah, 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 blah. And he was like, do you want to help bring hip hop to the suburbs? And I was like,
That's
yeah,
awesome,
I do.
Man.
And so the next thing I know, I'm like basically, working for Tommy Boy Records. I'm getting cases of mixtapes like shipped to my house.
Oh,
That's
my
awesome.
gosh.
Yeah.
That was my childhood, man. That was you had a direct influence on my childhood in the 90s.
Yeah, so I had a lot of like the joke that a lot of people used to say to me even today is like, you brought hip hop to the suburbs, and I'm like, yeah, kind of do.
That's a good reputation to have,
Yes,
man.
sir.
That's
Yes,
awesome.
sir.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious because you have this ability and this unique approach when it comes to marketing. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
You've been able to take all of these industries, the music industry, the motion picture industry. You've been able to take all of these and kind of make your own brand. And the relevance to that story and why I was wondering is because I feel like that's where the Andrew Saunders brand kind of started. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I just found it very interesting, man. I thought that was really cool. So yeah, man.
I think what it is, candidly, is like and this is part of I think why I'm in Web3. Like I'm a very intellectually curious person. Like I definitely get excited about something. I go down the rabbit hole, and then I need to understand every little facet of it. And so that's where I think a lot of the kind of if I look at like my knowledge base, I would say like 80-90% of it is self-taught. And that's why I love Web3 is like I think all the tools are out there. I think you just have to have the time and drive and ambition to do it. But I think again, like what really happened, because I started to your point, I started in Hollywood, then I went into media, then I went into digital, big tech, all that is early on. I was like, I want to be a CMO one day. I knew marketing was my thing. There's a funny story I can tell you as to how I know that. And I was like, what does the best CMO in the world look like? And I said to myself, I think it's someone that understands every facet of marketing,
100%.
both at a macro and micro level, right?
Yeah.
And so what I did early on was I was like, I want to learn all these things. And so, I didn't know production. So I befriended, the head of production at Deutsch, a huge advertising agency. He taught me production. I didn't know media buying and planning. So at 23 years old, I befriended Disney's global head of media and had her teach me media buying and planning. And I created value for these people in my own way, on my side. A lot of them have remained friends for like 20 years, but basically like my college education, or I guess I should say grad school education, came from like best in class folks in all these industries that were specialists in those things. And I became this kind of hybrid, non-traditional person. And the joke I always tell is, back then I used to reach out to, big recruiters in advertising, and I'd be like, I want to work at, Wieden & Kennedy, or I want to work at, Coca-Cola. And they were always like, well, but you're a jack of all and an expert at none. And I was like, I hear you. I was like, but long term, I don't think that that's the case. And it's funny because a lot of them I've kept in touch with over the years. And then what's happened, sure enough, is like probably the past 5-6 years, they all call me. They're like, where do I find another you? And I'm like, you don't, my friends. Like, and I'm not going back to Web 2. I'm good.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's huge, man. I mean, obviously, and my grandma, she always told me, man, no matter if you were somebody picking up garbage, for the county, or if you're washing dishes, or no matter what you do, there's always something to learn and take that with you, to your next job, man. And I think you have been just such a great example of that, honestly, man. So,
thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that, by the way, like, because I think a big thing in Web3 is like, this is a big reason I'm here, is like, I really don't think it matters like where you grew up, country even, where you went to school, like what your education looks like. I'll give you a great example. Like when I worked at Amazon, I was at headquarters, and obviously we had all the, fulfillment centers, the factory workers, and one of the things people didn't realize is like there's actually a program where if you're a factory worker, there's like free classes you can take to like up level your skill set and then try to apply to jobs at HQ. And we hired when I was there for our social team, we hired a factory worker who went from, factory worker to social marketer, who ended up being incredible. And then I would even add to her credit, like had this incredible work ethic and hustle because she also felt so grateful to be there, right? That sometimes you don't get when folks are entitled or kind of given that future. So I just would always say to folks, like, don't think your world is set in stone. Don't think the roadmap is already paved for you.
Right.
Like, because I know that I'm a little bit of an anomaly where like I don't care about some of these things that most traditional, companies and businesses do. But I think that like as you start to see more CMOs that, again, like me, started in their 30s, that come from a different generation, I think more folks are going to be more open-minded to, I don't care that you went to college. I don't care that you live in, this country. I think that that's kind of the future of a lot of business. So anyways, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
That's awesome, Andrew. Yeah, I mean, you were definitely, we'll say we're about the same age. I'm not going to get into details.
We're not going to say no numbers now.
We'll say we're close
Mine
to the
starts
same
with a
age.
4.
I mean, I knew where you were going as soon as you said Tommy Boy. I mean, look, when Wu-Tang Clan came out, I remember we used to sneak the tapes were like, because that underground hip hop was so raw when Wu-Tang put their 36 Chambers came out. It was like you felt like your friends were sneaking you something illegal. Like, hey man, listen to this. Have you heard this yet? And it was like we all snuck in the room at like 12, 13 years old and we're like sitting there listening. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, so for you to be able to go and work with Tommy Boy,
Dude,
and like,
that's incredible, man.
I mean, all that stuff, it's like, that's awesome on its own. And, just to shift gears real quick, we're going to get into
and actually, fun fact, I just went to the Wu-Tang Nas show a couple weeks ago.
Oh, nice, dude. I wanted to go see that. I've never gotten to see them. Or
it was epic. Method Man is like, the dude looks like he is just as jacked as he did like 20 years ago. It's kind of crazy.
Man.
Yeah.
I love Method Man. Love Method Man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So I will get into the Hashflow
Let's do it.
in 1 second, but while we're on the music thing, just one more second.
Yep.
So I know me and you have talked before online, just joking around about the keyboards and synthesizers and stuff, because you're a synth guy. So
I like my synths.
But I never got to really get into it with you, because if you were around that same era, it was kind of like we had grunge and rock, and then we had hip hop. It blew up, and then you had the whole Biggie and Pac thing, and then all of a sudden hip hop was like just didn't know where to go for a while, and then it was like. I don't know about for you, but for my generation, I grew up in D.C. in the suburbs. So we would go to D.C. nightclubs every Friday, a club called Nations. And we would go listen to house, trance, drum and bass, all the electronic stuff. Because it's almost like when the rap and when the rap thing blew up and just it was no more. And then the rock thing was kind of blasé. That just was what was in my little corner of the world was electronic music. And you being into synthesizers, does that mean you were into electronic stuff like house, drum and bass, or were you just into the actual keyboard aspect? And
no, I'm very deep. Like, so I'll tell you some funny things. Like, the interesting part for me is like, obviously, we both grew up around the same time, and then fast forward, I'm 22 years old. I'm the youngest agent at the time at CAA. Got promoted very quickly. Wow. And then again, I understand things that most folks in Hollywood don't, like digital strategy, brand development, that stuff. And so what starts happening at CAA is I start to become like, I guess a little bit of this wonderkin that they use to both, sign clients and also, client wants to understand this, go talk to them. And so some of the craziest memories I have from like my 20s, and you'll know all these names, are like having dinner with Paul Oakenfold at his house.
Oh, wow, dude.
Going,
here.
Yeah, like he was a nice guy. Or I walked into like Vegas. This was actually a couple years ago. I get there and folks start walking me through like a kitchen and the casino and all that. And I open the door and it's like Tiesto holding a bottle of champagne. And he goes, "Let's hang out." Dude. Or even like Armin. Like I don't know if you saw like Armin was on Alexa.
Armin van Buren, right?
Yeah, like he was on Alexa a couple of years ago. That was me because I'm friends with
Huge,
some of his
huge.
folks and
Those
stuff.
guys are
So,
monsters in the trance space. My God, I mean, you
yeah,
don't get any better than that.
No, and even now, like I'm pretty good friends with a lot of DJs too, because there's a lot of actually overlap. Like, well, I think also as someone that like represented artists, like I understand artists. I think a lot of times, even my old clients, they still call me with questions and things, and I'm pretty open to helping folks. But like I'm still really close with a lot of like Anjuna guys. I actually invested in a nightclub in Miami that has like a kind of a hidden dance club in the back, which is cool. So yeah, it's definitely like a big personal passion for sure. Yeah.
That's cool. So do you produce any of your own original stuff, or do you? I know you said you spin a little bit, right?
Yeah. So I actually, funny enough, I have an Anon account on Instagram that has like, I don't know what it's at now, but it was at like 40,000 followers for a while.
Oh, wow.
I haven't had time. Yeah, I haven't had time in a couple of years to do it, but yeah, it also actually, funny enough, it all started with a bet because I was at dinner with my friend who worked with Diplo, and I jokingly said to him, I was like, this Web2 thing, like it's just getting exhausting. I don't want to do this forever. And I just said to him, like, I have this idea. I'm like, how many followers do I need on Instagram to be like the opening act at Tomorrowland? Like, not the headliner, like the 3 o'clock guy, because they pay for, they give you a stipend and all that. And I was like, what I could probably do is just be the opening guy at all these festivals, get my stipends, just kind of enjoy my life, do a little consulting on the side. And so he jokingly was like, maybe like 10,000, followers. And I knew like Marshmallows folks, I knew all these guys, right? So most of them were like, we'll have you be like a little baby opener act. And it just quickly, because I'm, good at marketing, went from like 100 people to like 40,000. And then they were kind of like, oh wait, this is like not a joke. And then I got busy with other things. So yeah, but maybe one day I'll do it.
Well, that's awesome, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
So let's kind of switch gears and focus on the Hashflow and the Hashverse, man. We've been having a ton of fun in the Hashverse, dude. Like during a bear market, and what you guys are doing over there, man. It's just been it kind of takes your mind off of other things that's going on, So
it does.
Yeah, you get it.
Been a lot of fun. So they have a unique approach, right? With the RFQ model, the request for quote model. How does that differ from AMMs that's commonly used in the DeFi space? What is unique about
Yeah,
Hashflow?
for sure. Yeah, for sure. I can answer that question. So easiest way to think about it is in a sense kind of like, where does the liquidity come from, right? So in an RFQ model, which I think we have a pretty clean like diagram on hashflow.com and like the doc center if you want to see it. But the easiest way to think about it is it's a hybrid on-chain, off-chain model, right? And so if you think about like Hashflow as a company, or you look at kind of who our investors are, which is one of the reasons I came here, among others, it's the premium market makers. It's like GSR, Wintermute, these really big market making firms. And I think for me, it was like, okay, it's great that they're investors, but they're also the liquidity providers, right? And so they're also incentivized to make Hashflow successful. Yeah. And so, really the way to think about it is, I want to make a swap. Let's say, those 3 market makers are all kind of willing to make that pair or provide the liquidity for that pair. And then in a sense, what it's doing is it's saying to all 3 of them, and vice versa, kind of like, here's the price quote. And so what that means is, if I want to swap from one asset into another, there isn't going to be slippage the way that you would have in an AMM, because I think the easiest way to think about an AMM, or the way I kind of explain it to normies, is like, think of it as like a crowdsourced liquidity model, right? And then obviously with that crowdsourced model, you may have, different quantities at different price points. And then also, as quote unquote, you take more assets off the market, that price can change. So it's really, again, like we always joke, it's like what you see is what you get. And so what we find on Hashflow in general is like, we have a lot of whales, right? Because again, if you're going to make, $1 million swap, even though slippage may be a small percentage, like that's a lot of money, especially if you're doing that on a regular basis. And what I try to say to, a lot of retail traders and friends myself is I'm like, listen, I get that, if you go into an AMM model, you may see this tiny little number for slippage, but I don't think you understand the aggregate of that, right? So like I day trade. So I look at like, not just my gas fees, but like, how much slippage am I paying on pairs, that I need to get through an aggregator or an AMM or something like that? And again, like when you start to look at that on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on an annual basis, and even more importantly, like a lifetime basis, that is not $0, right? And so I think what's cool about the RFQ model that we have today is it really just, in a sense, keeps like more tokens in your own hands, you know, which I think is a pretty good customer value prop.
Yeah, for sure. So, Hashflow launched in April of 2021? Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So they've done over 15 billion in trade volume, ranking as
17 billion, my friends, as of today.
17 billion, dude. So much changes in and quickly.
I know.
Top 10 decks. Yeah. I think that last time I looked, man, weren't they like up around 6 of the top?
Yeah,
10?
we were at like. Yeah, I think like when I first started, we bounced typically between like 10 and 15. I think right now we tend to bounce between like 6 and 8. But I think like one thing I would just call out, like we don't wash trade. Like again, like I don't how sophisticated the audience is, but for anyone that's not, what wash trading is typically DEX is driving fake volume and to climb a leaderboard for awareness and marketing. But like we don't wash trade. There's no wash trading on Hashflow. And so when you see numbers like, I think recently we did like 188 billion, I think we did like 180 million in a week. Like that's real trades. That's real traffic, that's not being manipulated by our team in any way, which I can't say is the case for everybody. So for me, when I see, volume increases consistently going up the past 4 months in a market that just continues to be dead, that's a good signal for me. And when I see these massive numbers in a market like this, that's another good signal for me. So I'm very optimistic about Hashflow long term. Yeah,
for sure.
Okay, so I had a question for you about the actual, the trading element. Using the DEX. I don't want to get too technical because there's people out there that don't really know. What M.E.V is, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but it kind of ties into what you're doing. And I first learned about it with I don't know if you heard about it, but it was a company called Flashbots.
I'm very familiar. Yep.
Yeah, they were working with Uniswap, and all of a sudden they just kind of faded into the background. They weren't with Uniswap anymore. Correct me if I'm wrong. But
I don't know enough about the history, but I know like Hasu, who's over there, and I'm very familiar with Flashbots. Sure.
So that was the last I heard. Like there was no big buzzwords. I'm a huge Chico crypto fan. He's pretty much my favorite influencer. He's very unforgiving. If you're a noob coming into crypto and you're trying to watch Chico, it's like trying to learn how to speak Greek. It's very intense. It's very difficult. But I tell you what, when I got into it, I said, I'm going to watch this guy every day for 6 months, no matter what, until I learn what the hell he's talking about. And that's what I did. I watched him every day. And, when you do that, it does open up your psyche. You do start to, if you want to learn Spanish, you should hang around Spanish people. You should try to listen to Spanish music. You should watch Spanish movies. So I did that with crypto. I was like, I got to learn the same way you are, self-taught. I self-taught myself with this. And, I hadn't seen anything about M.E.V, minor extractable value, which is basically the way I picture it in my head is you go to make the trade, right? You have slippage, that's one problem. But the M.E.V is almost like this, the automated market makers, it's almost like a bot cutting in line in front of you right before you make your trade. And they're saying, I'm going to take a little slice of that. So
it's front running is kind of the term, but you're pretty sprint on. Yeah.
But you guys at Hashflow are the only ones since Flash bots kind of disappeared. I haven't seen anyone else even talk about M.E.V. I haven't seen any decks address it at all. And so I just wanted to say that reason alone kind of turned me on to Hashflow. And then once I saw that it was gamified, I was like, wait a minute. I started getting all hyped up. I thought we were going into a first-person shooter. So I told Wes, I was like, we got guns, man. We're going to be running around like Call of Duty, man. And Wes is like, I don't think we're doing that, man. I think it's kind of but you guys have that vibe going on. So my question is, and it's maybe not so much a question as it is a suggestion, maybe like in the future, maybe a couple devs over there, maybe you got some friends, maybe you guys could talk about it. I don't know. I think it would be awesome to have like You remember Oregon Trail when you used to play Oregon
Yes, I
Trail?
grew up on
dude,
that
Oregon
game.
Trail
Yeah.
yeah, dude, Oregon Trail.
So what
There's
if
a
you
remake,
did,
by the way, on Switch. Yeah.
I heard that, dude. I heard that.
So what if you did the trading questions, right? And then after every couple of trading questions, you don't go hunting for a bear, but you get to go blow up your friends with the Hail Mary. I mean,
Okay,
I'm just
so-
putting it out there.
There we
Andrew.
go,
I'm just
dude.
putting it out there.
So I'll tell you, okay, so I'll give you the TLDR. So the TLDR is, well, actually, let me take a step back on the M.E.V front. So, yes, I think not just M.E.V, but like in crypto, like nodes, oracles, all these things, they're like very technical, right?
Yeah.
And even for me as a guy that came from like big tech and web 2, like there was a learning curve. Like it took me time to understand this stuff. The tip that I have for listeners is ChatGPT. Like I really, so I have a whole onboarding guide because most folks that I do hire some folks from the community. I try to when I can,
Yep.
but then if I'm looking for a very specific skill set that isn't kind of crypto native, a lot of times I'm hiring normies and then like helping them become crypto native as quickly as I can. So I have a whole kind of strategy and guide for that because as you guys know, like the quality of most information out there is pretty bad. Right. But one of the tips in that guide is to literally bookmark ChatGPT and to use it to understand things. And I'll give you the example, like if you type into ChatGPT, like explain M.E.V to me like I'm 5 years old, it'll create an analogy that I think is very easy to understand. And you read that analogy a couple times and you're like, I got it. I got M.E.V, right? Or you're like, explain an M.E.V sandwich attack to me like I'm 5 years old. Or explain, crypto oracles, crypto nodes to me like I'm 5 years old. I really think that like analogies are one of the best ways to understand things. And ChatGPT does a pretty great job at most of that stuff.
That's where I'm going wrong, man. That's where I'm going right. So I need to add as a 5-year-old. Explain it to me as a 5. That's where I'm going wrong, man.
That's the key words. That's
That's
the key
what I
words.
was doing wrong.
Yep.
That
And you can do like as a 7-year-old and it'll come up with like different variables. I mean, it's funny, but like, but yeah, I don't think people understand. I mean, because I come from AI, like I worked in AI for 3 years. So when ChatGPT came out, like I definitely understood. Well, I understood first off why like we hadn't seen things like it before, which I won't get into. That's like a long conversation. But I just very quickly was like, I see the possibility here. And so my team at Hashflow, like we use a lot of AI tools in tech and it helps us streamline. It helps us interpret data, like all these things. But I don't think people really understand like how these things can be used to like expedite your learning and knowledge base very quickly, Yeah.
No, for sure, man. That Chat GPT is something I'm trying to figure out. Sierra's a little more skeptical about it than I am. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good tool to use.
Yeah. And then remind me, there was like a second part. I'll go back to that.
Well,
for you.
it was the first person shooter.
that?
The
first person shooter.
I'm just putting that out there,
Okay.
like I said.
Yeah, FPS. All right, we'll talk FPS. So the TLDR, there's kind of two things I would call out. So one is when I was on the market, I had probably about 25 companies reach out in like the first week. And I was looking for something very specific. I started talking not just to, all the companies reaching out. I started reaching out to others. I started talking to, Dragonfly and the other VCs. And what I was looking for was very specific. And even the folks at Dragonfly, who candidly I adore, I love those guys. They were like, you know what you're looking for? There's like 3 companies in the entire industry that check that box. And I was like, well, who are they? And who do you like the best? And they're like, well, probably Hashflow. And I was like, well, that's a coincidence because that's one of the companies I'm talking to. So, and I can get into all the other things I love about Hashflow and why I'm here. But like as a VC and also as a guy that's lived in all these industries, like pretty much every company I personally invested in like has succeeded to some extent. And so I kind of know how to pick them as an investor.
Right.
And so I end up...
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that, Andrew.
Me too. For sure.
And so I kind of apply the same model to like everything, as funny as it sounds, like even like NFT collections and things, like I kind of apply the same model I use to everything. And so Hashflow kind of checked all the boxes for me and then some. And so one of the things I said to them before I got here was I was like, listen, guys, like I trade, like I'm probably your target customer, or community member. And so I just said point blank, I'm like, let me tell you all the things that I would change. Right. And that's like a bold thing for someone like in that stage of a conversation to say to someone. And part of what I loved about these guys is like their response was both, wow, we really appreciate this. And also a lot of these things are on the roadmap. And so that was also an indicator of like, this is my home. Like these guys they already know, They value feedback. They value transparency. Like, I mean, there's a whole slew of reasons that I genuinely love working at Hashflow, like more than probably any job I've ever had in my career. But yeah, that was a big one for me. And then, obviously if you look at the founders, it's like, previously NASA, head of German aerospace, Stanford PhD, GC is like former Google AI, COO is former management consulting for, Big Five, the Goldman Sachs and Citibanks. CTO comes from, Airbnb, Meta. I come from, Amazon and obviously other industries. So it's a pretty heavy hitting group. And I would say even in general, like the team understands business building, the team understands scaling, the team understands P&L. And more than anything, like we all like each other, like on a human level. Cause that was a big thing for me. Like I just wanted to find folks where like my personal values align. I could see myself actually becoming friends with these people over time. And honestly, some of these guys at Hashville have really become like probably best friends for life for me. I can't tell you like how synergistic it's kind of been since the beginning. So yeah.
Well, we went a little over time, Wes. We're at 40 minutes.
That's okay. We can keep going if you guys want.
Pretty good. Yeah. But just real quick,
sure.
How do we take layer 3 down? Because these guys are like 900,000.
The layer 3 allegiance?
They are killing it, bro. They're at like 900,000. We're sitting here. Lost Donkeys is at like... Man, they are killing us, bro. They got like 700 more people, though. So
give us some alpha, Andrew.
Give us some
All right, I'll give you guys some alpha. First. So, okay, let's take a step back. So I'm at Arbitrum, obviously building my team. You guys know Hunter. Hunter was on my team. Eli was on my team. And so Arbitrum Odyssey was, I think, even more successful than folks anticipated. And obviously the Odyssey leveraged, I believe it was Galaxy at the time, but the Quest model, right? And I think, I won't get into specifics, but I think like it was more successful than anticipated. As a result, it was put on hold and then resumed. But like that was, I would say, the beginning of like, oh my God, here's a Web3 marketing model that really works, right? And so you then saw, Optimism Quest. You've now seen, Mantle Journey. And the first thing I would say as a marketer is like, I really do think like imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Like when I see another project in crypto, like copy what I'm doing or try to replicate it, I don't cringe at that in any way. If anything, I go, there's someone smart over there that's, learning and observing and researching, and they're seeing that this works. And my hope is that they then take it and then alter it and make it unique to them, which is, there's a great book called Steal This Art, which basically says that nothing is actually original. Everything is a derivative and iteration of something in the past. And really the best artwork does it in a way that it doesn't even feel like the past, right? But I believe in that. So I never take offense to that stuff. If anything, I'm excited to see it, right? And so obviously you're seeing, Optimism replicate it, Mantle, others replicate it. And to my understanding, like everyone's seen a lot of success in that. So that was great. So when I got to Hashflow, to be honest with you, like the game version 1, and you can blame me for the delay in launch. Like I will take credit for that. I got in my first week and I was like, we got to rethink a lot of this. Like I basically was like, I think we should create a team-based competition element to this. Let's bring in these types of communities. Let's bring in these exact communities. Let's think about, all these different models. Let's think about how to maybe even reinvent the project grant model from like a pricing standpoint. And so there was a lot of thought and even candidly, a lot of psychology put into a lot of elements of this when I got there. And so, what that meant was we now had to go onboard 18 projects. We had to create 150 original assets. Like there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that people don't realize while I'm still new, while I'm still building a team, while I'm still trying to onboard new people. And so I think all of that worked. And so the other thing that we did once we launched is we said, well, why not also replicate kind of the Quest model? Because I don't know if you know this, but like in the Hashverse, if you look at it, there's all these daily Dexter quests and things like that. Like we built all that. So that's not powered by layer 3. That's not powered by Galaxy. Like we built that ourselves, right? That's how good our dev team is.
Right.
And so, but we had a great relationship with layer 3. I know those guys, they live in LA. I live in LA. We have a great relationship with Galaxy still. And so we were like, let's create a layer 3 allegiance. Why not? Right. And then I'll be honest, like the numbers, well, first off, I can talk numbers in general, but like the layer 3 numbers definitely exceeded my expectations in a positive way. I think when I got there, this is what always happens. Like founders say to me like, okay, what are our success metrics? Like what, how do we know if this is working? And I usually say, I'm not going to give you numbers. And the reason I say that is because a lot of Web3 is like inventing new models, experimentation, cracking things. Plus you have a lot of macro conditions you have to keep into mind.
Right.
You know, people might not be on Twitter, the bear market, all that. And so, you know, full transparency, in my head, I had said, for me personally, I'll look at this as a success if I can get 1,000 people to mint a character and if I can get 100 people to sign up and participate in the battle, right? And today we broke 5,000 mints.
Nice, dude. Yes.
In under like 3 weeks. And then we've had, I want to say, close to like 800 or 900 active players.
Yeah.
Which again, I'm like, yes, this has been very successful. And then I'm trying to think what I can and can't say alpha wise, but what I would say is like, we are not done. So there are going to be like, I think there's 4 new allegiances coming in, 2 of which are treasure. One is a blockchain. One is another platform. And so I think with layer 3, the way to look at it is layer 3, in my opinion, has built a really great bridge between normies and crypto, right?
100%.
Yep. Yeah, and I think again, like
they're the team to beat, man. They're tough.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, they're
Hashverse,
great.
Of course,
they're a great
Hashverse,
team.
But
yeah, it's also just a great
bro.
company. Yeah, I like the layer 3 folks a lot. And so that being said, another thing with Hashverse and part of why the launch was delayed was, both the CEO and I said, like, we understand account abstraction is going to take a while. For anyone that doesn't know, that's like taking away the complexities of crypto and things like that. And so we tried to create an onboarding experience that was like as friendly to normies as it was to natives. And there's certain things like we can't change, like wallet connect and that stuff.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of things that we could change, like making your first, entry into it an onboarding experience, creating game guides in 7 languages, all these different things. And so I think that, again, what happened with layer 3 is you had, basically a bridge to normies that was very easy. Then they entered the Hashverse and it remained very easy. And then what actually has happened, which is interesting from a conversion standpoint, is a lot of those folks joined the layer 3 allegiance, but a lot of them also joined instead the Hashverse allegiance.
Yeah.
And so the way to beat them is pretty simple. And I think Lambo at Donkeys kind of knows this. But basically what he's been doing is he knows that every player has the ability to change allegiance once per season.
Right.
Once you change allegiance, you're done. You can't leave your team. And so what he's been doing is just actively and aggressively trying to poach folks from, layer 3 and other allegiances, because he knows that once those folks become donkeys, there's no going back. They're his, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I don't think enough teams are doing this. I think a lot of teams, what they're doing is they're marketing to their own communities. They're trying to pull their community members in. They're trying to create some awareness and hype online. But I don't think they're aggressively and actively poaching from other allegiances. And the alpha there is, once you poach them, they can't go back,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
So
I was
that's a little alpha for us. That's a little sneak tip.
for sure. Bro, I was in I think I hit 4th place and like before I could even celebrate. Like I was just an immediate target.
You're at
you know. But yeah, really cool, man. We've been having a lot of fun with that, man, and
I'm glad
to be a part of that for sure. Yeah.
And a couple of things I would just call out even for you guys is like, just in terms of the psychology and all that stuff, is like there was a lot of thought that was put into it. Like, for example, like we wanted it to be, we wanted it to be a free mint because, like, again, I really believe in this ethos of like Web3 is for everyone. Web3 empowers everyone. So we wanted that to be accessible. When you look at kind of single player mode, you have story quests, which, again, like we created in partnership with, the same folks that have worked on big Marvel franchises. So we're like, let's entertain people. Let's, lean into some passion points like AI and, space and things that we know a lot of people in crypto are interested in. Then you have Daily Dexer, which really, I mean, that didn't exist before I came here. And really the idea there was I said, why wouldn't, as a platform, we want to help actually up level people's trading experience, or even take people that are too afraid to trade and give them the tools to feel, empowered to become traders.
Yeah.
And so the idea there was like, if we can be the platform that actually helps, both grow and build traders, then hopefully there's some brand loyalty there down the road, right? Like they don't forget how they learn this stuff. They don't forget who helped them get to point B. And so what'll happen there is, to your point, like, that'll continue for a long period of time and it'll progress. So right now you're learning DeFi terms, you're learning TradFi terms, you're learning kind of macro things. Down the road, you're going to learn candlestick patterns, you're going to learn technical analysis, like these things that, there's Udemy courses and all that stuff, but we're also doing it in a very slow, accessible way so that everybody can do this. And I expect that over time, you're going to see some folks that come and do everything, some folks that just come for daily Dexter, some folks that just come to battle. And that was a lot of the thought process, was like, let's just build something that really brings value to a lot of different types of people in different ways.
Yeah.
And, hopefully folks want to do everything, but if not, that doesn't really matter to me, you know? Yeah.
What do you feel like has been your biggest challenge as far as Hashflow goes and the Hashverse? Like, what do you feel was what was your biggest challenge as far as onboarding new users and so on?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think like the biggest challenge is probably more macro, like bear market. So, full transparency, like it is a lot easier to market in a bull market than it is a bear market, right? And so the good news is, like, I have an Amazon data science team on retainer. I have, our own kind of third party data team. We have our own custom CRM and addressable media platform. Like it's pretty sophisticated over here. And so what I've been able to do is leverage all of that and, and the folks here and my assumptions to I think still like, crush it in the bear market. But like, it's not easy. It's not easy when, overall sentiment in crypto is down, when folks' bags are down. I mean, you almost as a marketer have to understand that like marketing in a bear market and marketing in a bull market are two completely different things regardless of your product. So I think in general, like marketing in a bear is challenging for sure.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I would say was a challenge is just, not too dissimilar to when I was at Arbitrum, but like when you're a CMO and you started a company, you're starting at ground zero. So you may come, like I remember at Arbitrum, I came in and it's like, let's launch Nova, and I have no team, right?
Right.
Kind of the same thing at Hashflow. I come in, I had, I had a social guy, I had more of a product guy, I had a bit of a data guy, but it was still a very small, team that again, I hadn't, integrated into my own structure and style and those things. And it was like, okay, we're going to launch the biggest product in company history in a couple months. Like, let's go. And it's like, so you're trying to, one, plan for that, build for that, simultaneous to onboarding yourself, simultaneous to building a team, to onboarding those people. So it's a lot of like just moving pieces at once that are all equally as important and valuable. And I think trying to balance those things and do them all successfully at once is very hard. I think where I'm lucky is this is now the fifth marketing organization that I've built from the ground up. So I've done this before. So I know the roadmap, which I think takes away maybe 25% of the pain points, but it's still really challenging.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, dude,
Absolutely.
you definitely had the advantage of, your background and being able to implement that unique approach from your experience, man, to come into Web3 and definitely make some waves, man. But yeah, we're gonna try to wrap it up here. Siri, is there anything you want to add before we jump off, man?
No, I just wanna say thank you. You guys, you and Lambo shred the whole crew and Hashflow. I mean, it's just
it
feels
fun,
good to be
sure.
it feels good to be a part of that group because like he said, the bear market, it's like it makes you move forward. I just want to say thank you for coming on. We've been looking forward to it, and everybody out there, everybody out there, if you haven't checked out Hashflow and Hashverse, you need to get on it because this is early ground level time to be getting in, and it's a great project. We've done a lot of deep digging in it, but it's like it's got the King Midas touch. Anything that Andrew touches turns to gold, baby.
That's it, man.
So you better get on it. You better hurry up. Don't sleep. Get in early and get in hard.
And pay attention, guys.
So I'll give you I'll give you the like alpha. So like obviously you can follow us on at Hashflow at Hashverse. My handle's at Andrew Saunders, but the things I would actually call out that I think like not everybody's always aware, and also links in bio too. Like if you're worried about clicking links, I always say to friends like don't click links.
Yeah.
We'll put
Discord
that in the description. We'll put all the links in the description of the video.
Yeah, and then we have on Discord, there's like a Smack Talk channel, which is actually dedicated to Hashverse.
Yes.
A lot of the allegiances also, I've come to realize, have alpha channels, sometimes in their Discord, sometimes private Telegram groups. So if you're in an allegiance, figure out who your captain is or ask around. Because there's definitely a lot of scheming behind the scenes from what I've heard.
For sure, sure.
Yep. And then the one that most folks sleep on, in my opinion, is the hash beat. So if you just go to hashflow.com, you'll see our newsletter. But and I intentionally do this. This is a growth marketing strategy. But like we actually put alpha in there earlier than we do on social. And the idea there is how do we incentivize people to actually subscribe to that and actually read it? And so we'll often like announce things, or even for Hashverse, like we open it up for beta testing for community members.
Yeah.
But that stuff always comes from the Hashbeat. So I always say, like, if you don't want to use your email, create like, a Proton Mail Anon account, or create a burner account on Gmail. But like, don't let your anonymous nature be, a hindrance to like getting that information.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. What an honor it was, man. So good to talk to you on the
likewise.
channel, man. Thank you so much for coming on again.
No, thank you guys.
Yeah, dude, that's gonna wrap it up. Make sure you guys are following Andrew at Andrew Saunders. Make sure you're following us, obviously, at the Crypto Remora, Sierra at Sierra Crypto, myself at Crypto MacGyver. Much love to you guys, and until next time, peace out. Andrew, thank you so much, man. Can't wait to have you on again.
Oh, likewise. All right, much love, you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.